Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay at home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight, got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet, cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Home Dad Chat. We are very excited to come back today and just have a fun conversation about just, kids and all their goofiness and whatnot. And of course, I've got my good buddy and friend, Danny, with us tonight. How are you doing today?
Hey man, I'm doing all right. I'm having a really good day, honestly. The kids went into school late today, so it made the whole schedule shut off. But it was fun for them to sleep in. I made pancakes, and we had a really good day. They went to class happy, which they were all ready to go to school. They usually are, but it was really good today. And they came home all feeling good, no fighting. Everybody ate dinner well. So yeah, again, call it a win.
Wait, so why did you have a delay to school?
Well, if, as you recall, I live in Georgia, and if you drop a popsicle on the ground in Georgia, they're going to close the schools, right?
Oh,
No,
okay.
but the big issue was, and they did say it was an overabundance of caution,
Yeah.
looking at the potential for black ice this morning.
Mm,
Because what happened is it was actually pretty warm last night. It was like 36 or something like that
yeah.
throughout the whole night, and then once the sun came up, the temperatures dropped down into the high 20s. So I think 28, 27, something like that. So we had a lot of stuff that was sitting and everywhere there were puddles and things on the road. And the way the roads work here, and probably the same everywhere, but you'll have that area that doesn't get enough sun or whatever the day before and then freezes up. And if you get black ice on it, you really don't want to take a chance. So they
Oh, yeah.
basically just delayed it 2 hours. It was not a big deal. We're coming out of a 4-day weekend, so I don't think there was a whole lot they were going to get done today anyway. But just to make sure that there was no trouble with it, and we hit one place on our route to school today that did have black ice on it, and it was a small patch, but you can just think about driving a school bus with
Oh, yeah.
10, 15, 20, 30 kids, whatever, on it, and the potential problems. So they were just, and they said it, and like I said, in the email and the text and the phone call and everything else, they sent us probably 15 messages. We're starting late tomorrow, guys. We're starting late tomorrow.
Yep.
But it's an overabundance of caution, like they said. And
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would prefer it, honestly.
Yeah.
And you
I mean,
can't do anything about ice.
no, my mother's been a school bus driver for 20 plus years, so I
Oh, cool.
completely understand like how that all works out, especially the sliding. I've seen some buses slide before.
Hmm.
That's been fun. But
Oh,
yeah, no, well, for us we were canceled. We
hmm.
had the full true snow day. And so after I shoveled 2 inches of ice and 3 inches of snow around the house and got that all taken care of. We went sledding for a little while, and oh my goodness, the hill that we typically go to is it's a fast high hill or whatever. But my parents were down this weekend for my son's birthday, and they brought those round sleds.
Hmm.
And I had no idea like the difference between one of those and like a flat, just like plastic sled. There is a major difference in like how fast those things go.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and it was packed. Like, I mean, like the snow was packed down really good. So it was almost like just being on a sheet of ice. And I went down first because I was like, I want to be at the bottom of the hill because I don't know what this thing is going to do with the kids. And I had my son send my daughter down second, and she flew down the hill like Chevy Chase in National
Oh,
Lampoon
no.
Christmas Vacation flew. Like if I hadn't have stopped her, she would have like made it into the parking lot. And
No.
I stopped her, and he came down, and it was all good. And we went back up and we did it one more time. And when she came down the second time, she almost bowled over like 8 like junior hires
Oh,
who were
no.
like for whatever reason we're having a powwow in like the drop zone like down there. I'm
Hmm.
like, y'all are in the kill zone. Like y'all need
Yes.
to get
Yeah.
out of the way. And like she
Yes.
came bullsing down, and I'm like, get him out of the way. Like you just saw him scatter. It was
Incoming.
Oh, it was so funny. And I was like, y'all need to move. And so they finally like got out of the way. And my son came down, and we were standing there, and then a guy from my dad's group just happened to be there with his kids, and we were watching them go down, and the oldest came down, and he like tanked out in the middle of the hill, and his little brother was right behind him, and there wasn't enough distance between them, and they just crashed into each other, and we're like watching the whole thing take place, and then and then my son, when he came down, crashed into them, is what it was actually. But
Mhm.
we all decided that this was not the hill for these kids, and so we ended up going to a smaller hill in the front part of the school and spent the rest of the time there. But it was good. It was
Yeah, sounds like it.
it was a full day, but I was happy to get to take them sledding and have some fun with it.
Yeah, and in that little bit of danger, you're not really probably going to get injured, but that little bit of is kind of what you do it for. Like roller
Oh,
coasters
sure.
or anything else. Is that moment of that thrilling moment. So
Hmm.
I bet they had a great time.
Yeah, they
Remember it
did. I
forever.
thought my daughter was going to be freaking out when I stopped her the first time, because I had to stop her with some pretty good gusto, and she like kind of get a little bit of whiplash. And I was like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Oh yeah, that was so much fun." I'm like, "All
Yeah,
right,
do it again. Do it again.
love these kids made of rubber. I tell you what."
Right, right. Oh, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
So I mean, yeah. So it was a good day, nothing crazy, and
Good.
I'm pretty sure they'll be going back to school tomorrow, unless something were to happen over the evening, which I don't think it's supposed to do anything tonight. But then again, tomorrow night I think it's supposed to. So it's like go to school
Hmm.
for a day and then be off again for another day, and who knows? Like
Yeah.
it is what it is. But yeah, man. I mean, it's fun to talk about what kids do and how they do things, and I feel like each kid has his own quirkiness in a
Hmm.
different way, and we all get fun stories out of it as parents,
Oh, definitely.
whether it be like something gross that they do, something weird that they do, maybe something that just they said made you like laugh a bunch, or the one thing that my wife and I find are things that we say to the kids that we never thought we would ever utter out of our own mouths, whether
Yeah.
to anybody. And then too, like the one thing that we found recently was like things that we never thought we'd have to teach our kids, like
Hmm.
just that kind of stuff. So kind of fun to maybe talk about some of those tonight and see just sort of like the things that our kids that we've experienced with them. Does that sound like fun to do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would
Awesome.
love to hear too what your kids have done to make you laugh. That's always been my thing. That's not the only thing, but that definitely is part of it. It was like those things that your kids like. I can't believe you said that, and I love you, and that's amazing. And my oldest at one point looked at my wife perfectly serious, said, "Mom, actually, I can ride a goat." And it was just as a declarative statement, mother, I have this ability and I'm going to go do it at some point if I see a goat. And I'm thinking, okay, one, that's hilarious. I don't know why you're thinking that or where that how your thought process ran to get you there. But two, no, that's not going to work like you think it's going to work. The goat is not going to participate in this activity.
Yeah, I don't see that going well. Not at
Mm-mm.
all.
No,
So,
not at
but
all.
but definitely keep your eye out for a goat, because you never know.
Yeah.
Petting zoos beware. Yeah, I think for me, like the most recent thing that happened that was really funny was my wife and I, we try to get the kids down for bed so that we can hang out together
Hmm.
at night, and for just a couple of hours. And this one particular night, we were sitting on our couch, and I was reading to my wife. I've always enjoyed reading to her. She likes listening to me read to her,
Hmm.
and we actually kind of just looking for a way to like spice up our marriage a little bit in reading. And a friend of ours was like, "Hey, have you read the 50 Shades of Grey series?" And I'm like,
Hmm.
"No." And I was like, honestly, I don't have any means to read it. And my wife started reading it. She's like, "I love these books." She got through all three or so of like the main ones from like the woman's perspective, because there are five of them out currently, and
Oh yeah.
like
Okay.
it's like a women's perspective and the man's perspective, like the
Hmm.
main characters. So she read the women's character ones, and then she was like, "You should read the guy one." So like it's like you read it. I'm like, "All right, fine." I read them, and oh my gosh, like I'll tell you what, like it gets the old blood turning, honestly. So I highly recommend taking a look at that. But I was reading to her out on the couch, and my son came down because he's a notorious procrastinator of sleeping, and comes down, and he always has an ice pack, like for whatever reason. He's like, "I just need to cool down." And so he was changing out his ice packs, and we're like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Changing out my ice pack." And we're like, "Okay." He's like, "Don't worry." He's like, "I'm not gonna interrupt your cuddle time, and then he like turns around and he puts up the like little quotation figures. He goes, or your what I like to call snuggle time. I'm like, oh my goodness. So yeah, and it was just funny how he said it. We're like, oh man, this is hysterical.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
just stuff like that.
yeah. It's amazing too. I mean, you don't realize how much they listen and how much they hear and how much they see and just in everything they do. And when you talked about it a minute ago, we're kind of like our entire lives for our kids is a teaching moment. All the things you have to
Oh
teach your
yeah.
kids. I never thought I'd have to teach my kids anything, but when you look at it, really, I mean, we had to teach them how to eat ice cream. If you
Yeah.
think about it. And
Yeah.
how do you not know how to eat ice cream? That's like the easiest thing in the world. But you actually have to show them this is, you can't just bite it, or you can, but don't want to knock the cream off the cone kind of thing. And all the things that they just soak up when they're doing it. And I will say, for me personally, my biggest hilarious moment is I'm driving and I'm following my wife to wherever we're going. We're just driving in two different vehicles. We met up or whatever, and she's got, at the time we only had one child, so we've got my oldest there, and she's sitting in the back, and my wife calls me laughing, and she said, you're not going to believe what your daughter just said. And I'm like, okay, sure, give it to me. And let's hit me with your best shot. And she said, well, um, she said, Mom, do you see all these people in front of us? And she's pointing to all the cars ahead of them, and my wife said yes, and my daughter said, they're all dumbasses. And I'm like, and I'm dying. I'm like, because I do cuss, and I try not to cuss, too much, but my kids know what adult words are and they don't use them, and it's been very well, but really hadn't prepped at that point. Again, first child, made a lot of mistakes. Um, and my wife says, I mean, and that's hilarious, but I don't know if we should be laughing at it. And I said, well, I mean, look at it, honey. She's probably right. I mean, we can't argue with the logic here. So, but just things like that. And they just pick up and parrot everything. And of course, I told my daughter, I was like, yeah, that's an adult word. You're not allowed to say that until you're 18. And she's like,
Yeah.
huh, all right, I'm
we
good.
tend we tend to do a lot of like when we're watching movies and shows, like they'll say something, we're like, hey, listen, like just because you hear it doesn't mean that you need to repeat it. And
Yeah.
we've said that with a lot of different stuff. Well, we watched a lot of MCU over the summer, like
Yeah. Yeah.
watched, and this is so funny and crazy. So in gym class, they were playing kickball earlier this year, and my son was getting really excited about like the game and stuff, and he just was like trying to cheer them on. And you know that scene in Guardians of the is it Guardians of the Galaxy? No, it's Infinity War, I think, where like they all converge on Thanos, but you've
Right.
got Star-Lord's character. He's the one that yells like something crazy, like "Let's go kick their asses" or something like that. So for whatever reason, that like stuck in his head.
Yeah.
And so he's out there at the kickball field during gym class, and all of a sudden he's just like, yeah, we're gonna kick your asses. Like this is a Christian private school, man.
Yeah, I'm leaving. I don't know whose kid that is. Somebody should pick
Oh
him
my
up though and
gosh.
take him home.
The gym teacher, like he's a really cool guy. And he's like, it took me everything in my body not to like die laughing. And of course, like he tells us the homeroom teacher, and they send us like a message through like an app that we have. It's like, hey, this happened in gym class. And we're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is totally my fault for watching all these movies. And told my wife about it. We picked him up and everything. No big deal. I saw the gym teacher when he was out there. I'm like, hey, man. Or I was driving in. I was like, hey, man. I was like, sorry about that earlier today. He's like, nah, you're cool. He's like, but it was really funny. And I'm like, yeah, I bet it was.
And you're trying your best not to laugh because you don't want to encourage it. You don't, because they love the shock factor and they love the laugh factor. If they can make you laugh, whatever it is, because they'll repeat it over and over and over. So, and you're trying like, no, that's not funny. I can't let that out.
But it's just like
Great.
stuff like that just kind of comes out in these weird ways with kids sometimes. You're like,
Yeah.
whoa, where did that come from?
Right. Right. And you know where it came from, but
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, like,
yeah.
yeah, you're like after a little while, you're like, oh, hindsight. Okay, yeah. All right. And that's everything too. My wife's always like, we gotta watch what movies we watch with them. And I'm like, oh man, I was like, that's a whole nother podcast in itself. It's like movies you
Yes.
want to watch with your kids, but movies you know you shouldn't watch with your kids until
Right.
like certain times.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like,
Yeah.
okay, I really want to show you this, and I watched it when I was your age, but it's not age
Yeah.
appropriate now.
Yes, it's terrible now. Well, I think of Jaws when it came out. I saw it, when it first came out, that first year that it came out, and it scared me for a very, very long time. And looking at it now, it's like, oh, that's not scary at all. This is goofy. I mean, my kids, we haven't watched it, but if they did, I'm sure they'd be like, what's the problem? That's a goofy looking shark. How did they make it? Is that a hand puppet? I mean, they're just because they're so high tech and all the movies these days, like you mentioned, the Marvel universe, they have amazing special effects now that Jaws is just paled in comparison.
Sure.
But again, one of those movies I'd love to watch with them or make them watch, and is just sit there. You'll be fine. Let's go swimming. Be okay.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have definitely been affected by the Jaws movies for sure, as far as like swimming. Now, I'll tell you something else that I saw happen the other day. Was it? Yeah, well, I think it was just yesterday. So my son was making or like putting butter on bagels for him and my sister, or not my sister, his sister. Yeah, I can't even talk
Okay.
tonight. For him and his sister, and I had walked out of the kitchen, and I come back in, he's still doing it, but he had gotten a little bit like kind of off to the side of the bagel, and I just see him like put it up to his mouth and lick it, and then he sets it on her plate, and I'm like, wait a minute. like hold on a second here. I was like, whose plate's that? And he's like, that's Ruby's. And I'm like, no. I'm like, you switch out one of your bagels with one of her bagels. I'm like, what are you doing, you crazy child?
Was he licking the butter off? Is that what
yeah,
it
he
was?
was just licking. He was just it was like, well, I didn't make it on the right part, so I'll just take and lick that off.
Just get it right off there.
Oh yeah, that's, and it's just like, okay, come on, kid, like stuff like that. Or for instance, yeah, go ahead. Kids are
they're just so gross sometimes. I mean, they're just things. They're just like when we moved where we live now, we just, our oldest, she was less than 18 months old, I think, but we'd been living a little closer to Atlanta. So we moved out here, a little bit of property, 7 acres, kind of little, set up a homestead, and all that. And I'm used to just about everything out here. And I will say my wife has almost nothing that bothers her, scares her, or really is any issue whatsoever, except for bugs. Bugs is just right out. She doesn't want to see them. She doesn't like moths. She doesn't like anything. And it's just a known thing with us that if there's a bug, I've got to handle it, which is fine. If there's a snake, she handles it, and she has no problem with it whatsoever. I can't put my hand on the picture of a snake. All right.
My wife is just very similar. She does not like snakes either.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because they don't have legs, they don't have shoulders. What is this thing? It's a danger noodle. We don't want to, but we were out front, and we were just got here, really didn't know the property very well, but we're walking around, and we've got our oldest with us, and it's like I said, our only child at that time. And I hear this sound come out of my wife, and it's this fear, this yelp, this eek kind of thing. And I immediately, I mean, all of my male, husband, dad instincts go, who's endangering my wife and child? And I turn around, and my wife is just pointing at our child. She's and I look at her, and she's just got a little cricket leg sticking out of her mouth, and the cricket leg is kicking. It's just like this, just like this, just like this. And I'm like, hey, what do you have in your mouth? And she goes, just shakes her head at me like, I ain't got nothing in my mouth. You don't need to talk to me. We're fine here, Dad. And my wife is like backing away slowly. She's like, no. You need to handle this, and you need to get that out of there. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to reach into a child's mouth. All right.
Hey, Pinocchio, spit out Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah, let me see that. And she did. She spit it in my hand, and I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, fella, you're not going to make it. I'm sorry. I'm going to put you somewhere. Maybe you'll survive, but I don't think so. And she's just looking at me like, yeah, I just saw it on the ground. Thought I'd put it in my mouth. Sure, like you do. Like, I mean, kids don't think anything exists, I think, until they put it in their mouth.
Chocolate covered grasshoppers, man.
Right? Yeah, a lot of protein in that. Come on, what's the problem?
Yeah, exactly. In some country, that's a delicacy.
Yeah, right. We've talked about it too in like a survival situation because we watch survival shows,
Hmm.
like Naked and Afraid or Alone or whatever. And
Yeah.
we really only watched Alone with the kids, and they loved the idea of it. And they're like, "Hey, can we go out in the yard?" And they built a quote unquote shelter. It was awful. They would not survive, but they don't have the skills yet. It wouldn't surprise me, but
To
like
start.
basically like a little tree house on the ground, and I think all kids kind of enjoy building their little forts, even if it's a blanket fort or
Oh
whatever.
yeah,
So they
definitely.
really enjoy doing it and getting into it. But I told them, I said, if you're starving, everything basically is food.
Hmm.
And that means if you're starving to death, why would you not eat a bug? Why would you not eat? I mean, there's guys on that show, the people on that show, I should say, that eat slugs
Oh
and
yeah.
like boil them. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to, that's a little gross, but I would do it to survive. I mean, you don't have a choice, right?
Heck yeah.
So it's
No,
life or death.
definitely. Yeah, I think you see that in a lot of those shows. You were
Hmm.
talking about like just sort of like the fear with the bugs and stuff, but
Hmm.
when I was a camp counselor back in the day when I was in college, I had a kid in my cabin who he had some weird reaction to when you smashed a bug.
Hmm.
And if you stepped on a bug and he saw you do it, he would puke.
Oh, wow.
No joke. Like, and
That's a
that's something that kids should
visceral
not
reaction.
that no kid should know about another kid, honestly, because you just know they just want to see it
That's
happen.
all that's going to happen.
And so
I don't really
literally,
believe it.
oh man, it was so crazy because like that whole week, I would catch at least one kid trying to make him puke. Like just like I'm gonna smash him. And the kid's like, no, don't do it. Like, and I'm like, I'd hear like, oh no, don't do it. It was like my sensors like ping. I'm like, where are they? Like right now. And I think only on like two different occasions, like right off the bat, like on the very first day, like someone smashed a bug in the cabin and he like
Mhm.
puked right on the floor. I'm like, what is going on? And then like that's when
Yeah.
it came out. And then later on that week, some other kid made him. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what a horrible reflex to have
Yeah,
to something
definitely.
like that. But yeah, that just wasn't fun. But it was interesting because I've never met another kid like that before,
Yeah.
so it was
Yeah.
really unique.
Yeah.
Oh
I've
man,
never heard of it, but I mean, you can consider too with kids, anything can set them off, with vomiting or with, any type of the thing, any type of reaction that they have. It's amazing. It's just like, wow, why would that even bother you? But it does. And
hmm
again, doing when other kids find out about it, they're just going to try to torture them, like you said.
oh
It's like,
yeah,
oh, we'll find a way. Let's bring some bugs in and pop them. No, mm-mm, no.
yeah. So there's stuff like that. It's interesting. Like kids just I don't know. It's one of those things where I think it's just that one side of humor. I don't remember anything like that, like as a kid myself, like doing. But it's funny, like your parents like sometimes will like point stuff out like that, or
Hmm.
relatives will point different things out. Apparently, when I was a kid, my aunt was watching me one night, and I came into the living room, and I believe it was like I was wearing like a t-shirt and underwear, sort of like Risky Business, like Tom.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think I ever saw that movie at that time, but I came in and I looked at her and I put my hands on my hips and I was like, I'm sexy. Like, and she to this day will like every once in a while just be like, I remember like that night.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was so many years ago. It was decades ago. But she's like, it was just so funny because you were just so proud of yourself. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, like that explains a lot for how I am
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. That confidence was born early, man. You gotta roll with it.
I guess. I don't know. Or some sort of like what do you call that? Where you like to show off. I don't know. Not that I
Hmm.
like to show off, but apparently I was when as a kid.
As a kid, I mean, you're still the same person, but it's amazing the things you can do when you were a kid. I remember we went to church, and it was me and my two brothers. And we went to church, and we were sitting next, I think, between my mom and my aunt or something like that. And uh, my aunt couldn't stop laughing. And my mom was like, what are you doing? You got to be quiet. What's going on? And so she pulled up my pants leg, and all three of us were wearing pantyhose because mom wore it and we didn't know what it was, but we all had it. And so we were all wearing it. And like, well, I don't have any socks. So we put on, some of these, this is what we do. Right. And my mom said, I mean, even again, like decades later, she said, I still laugh when I think of it, just looking. And you boys were so innocent. You didn't understand there was anything that you shouldn't wear this, or this is mom's. It was just like, no, this is what we wear to church. okay, ma'am, yes, ma'am, I'm going to wear these to church. He's like, how did my mind get there? I kind of think my older brother did it. So my older brother probably put us up to it
That
to
sounds
get me
like
in
an
trouble.
older brother thing. That sounds like it. I mean, I'm an older brother, but that sounds, yeah,
It does. Yeah. You know who you are.
yeah. You just got to see if it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. What can I convince you to do and get you in trouble for it?
Yes. I would say that I don't know that I went that far with my siblings, but yeah, it I definitely tried
Yeah.
from time to time. Oh gosh. Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm trying to think like some other things that like they've done. You got any other good stories of any of your kids?
Only, I mean, my kids are definitely adventurous and imaginative, and they say and do a lot of just crazy things. I mean, they're all pretty, I think, pretty intelligent. I mean, they could all be dumb, but how would I know? You know, these are the only kids I have, so I assume.
Yeah.
But like my second kid, he learned to write. He was learning to write his first, and what we did is our first initial. I think the schools probably do this too. Is like that's the letter that represents your name. Is
Yeah.
for him it's J, and he'd gone put himself down for a nap, which he was always great about doing, even as young kid. He was like, "Come over, take my hand, get his bottle," and he'd walk me in, and tell me, basically, put me in my crib, Dad. I'm going to sleep, and it was amazing. He was the best sleeper I've ever had. But I come back in because it sounds like he's up, and we didn't have a baby monitor or anything like that, or a camera, I should say. So I couldn't see what he was doing. We had a baby monitor. I apologize. We didn't have a camera to see what he was doing. I heard he was up, so I go in, and he's on the floor. He's taken off his poopy diaper, and he's made J's in the carpet. Just J,
Yay.
J, J. And he looks at me, he said, Dad, look, I can write James. And I'm like, no, yeah, that's amazing, buddy. I'm gonna have to. And that was the week that we bought a carpet cleaner.
Good
Because
good call.
yeah, well, we just use like the spray and the hand scrub up into that point and vacuum it up afterwards. No, I'm like, no, I'm going out right now and getting an actual, not a professional level, but an actual like Bissell
Yeah.
carpet cleaner because I can't. I've done, I've done many things with poop. I can't get this out on my own. I need help. So
Oh man, that's yeah. Well, kind of to go along with that, not so much with the poop side of things, but my my brother and I, when we were younger, we always wanted to help my dad wash his car, and he had
mhm.
a Chevelle, or
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
like just a little hatchback Chevelle,
yeah, yeah.
and or is it Chevelle or Chevette? Chevette. Sorry, he had a Chevette, not a Chevelle. I'm thinking Chevelle
Okay,
is like a sports car, but a
yeah,
Chevette,
yeah.
it's like the hatchback
Chevette's
Chevette.
still cool. Yeah, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
good little car.
So, we like to help him wash the car. Well, one day we thought that it would be fun to help wash the car, even though he wasn't washing the car. And we went into the garage and found what we thought was like the spray for like the tires or something like that,
Hmm.
And, but for whatever reason, we didn't use it on the tires. We actually had grabbed black spray paint and we pinstriped the back corner panel of the Chevette, and
Oh,
we just did one line and realized
uh-huh.
we had done wrong like immediately. It was like, oh shoot. And
That's when you hand it to your sibling and go, hold this. I'll be back, I
uh-huh,
swear.
yeah. Oh, we capped it, put it back in the garage, and took off to doing something else. And later my mom came out and she was just like, what the heck? The best part was is that she actually took a picture of it with the 35 millimeter camera that she had, and it stayed, like she kept it, and it came out on my graduation party. Like it was
Nice. Yeah,
sitting
yeah.
there in like a collage of other things, and it was like, hey, don't forget to look at the pinstripe job that my son did on his dad's car back when he was like 7. I'm
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, so that.
I thought I got away with that one.
Oh man, I didn't realize she had that picture until that day.
Yeah.
I knew the
Yeah.
story, but I didn't realize that she had taken a picture of it. She had saved the whole, like, that's the other thing. She had saved that picture for like a decade
Hmm.
and never even told me she had it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a surprise.
I love that too. We kind of live in the age of images and photography. There's cameras. Everybody has a camera
Oh,
on them
everybody's
usually.
got a camera.
And I
Yeah.
love the fact that you can look at it and let's look, 10, 15, 20 years down the line when our kids are, graduating high school or college or getting married or moving out or doing all those things, becoming an adult, and have the ability to come back and go, hey, do you remember that time you cut your brother's hair?
Mm,
Like, yeah, well, this, and show them a picture of it on whatever device we'll be using, 10,
yeah.
15 years from now, whatever it'll be. And just have that moment of, oh, yeah, yeah, I saw that. I know what you did. And yes, you're a ding dong.
It's definitely interesting the fact that you can chronicle like your kids'
Hmm.
lives like so much differently than back in the day when, your parents had like, oh, we actually have some film in the camera type of deal where other
Yes.
times you didn't. So, and it was just all just captured in memory.
And it was like 24 or 27 pictures tops. It was like
Yeah,
that was a
roughly.
roll of film, like let's say 30 even. And I think 30 pictures. Man, I could take 30 pictures on my camera just to see if I could get the right smile. Yeah, none of those are gonna, I'll just erase 29 of them and keep the one. Whereas back in the day, 1805, when I was a kid, where you had that, okay, this is I have to move the film forward, I have to focus, I have to wait for that moment and then hope I got it. And then I don't know that I got it for another week until it gets developed. It's like, wow, where are we living?
I
Love
think there's
living
a
in the
whole
future.
I think there's like a whole story or a whole like podcast episode just to do on like, hey, like let's try to get like how many old devices and things we can put in front of our kids and see if they can figure out how to use them kind of deal, and like kind of go from there. I've seen some really funny YouTube videos where they've like sat like rotary phones and
Hmm.
cassette players and stuff like that in
Yes.
front of the kids. They have no idea how to use any of that stuff. Or
Yeah.
even better would be like, hey, here's a roll 35 millimeter camera and a camera, load it.
Yeah.
Good
See
luck.
what we can do from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not going to go well.
No, no. No, you're not expecting anything out of that one. I showed my kids a picture of um a black and white TV with the two dials,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and just showed them a
A
picture and I said,
console TV. Yeah.
"What a console?" Yeah, and I said, "What's this?" And one of my kids said it was a microwave, and I went, "Okay, sure." And then the other kid, and this hurt me. This hurt me deeply. Right? He said, "Oh, I know what that is. That's a TV from like the 1900s." And I went, well, you're not wrong, but you may have to leave the house now because that's just painful what you just said, the
From the
1900s. But it
1900s.
is, it's 21, 22 years ago,
Oh,
was
man.
was I'm like, wow, okay. I'm feeling every moment of my age now. But yeah, it
I,
was great.
so speaking of TVs with TV console type of stuff, so for a longest time, my dad had upgraded our TV console. Like we had a big Zenith TV console, and he had bought a flat screen TV, and he
Hmm.
just sat it on top of it. Because I mean, it's a show.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it was so funny. Like in college, like I think it was yeah in college, going over to the house and it was like you got your console sitting here, and you have your like you have your flat screen TV sitting on top of it. We eventually convinced him to like get something different underneath there, but he's like, "Why? What? It works.
It
Why
works
do I
fine.
need to
Right? Why do I have to get rid of it? There's nothing
like?
wrong with it.
Come on, Dad. Like just get rid of
That's
that old hunk of
that's
junk."
that's very dad though. That's very, very
Oh yeah,
dad.
yeah. Well, I was talking with Patrick Quinn the other day, and I was talking with him on Zoom, and behind him he had a console TV. I'm like, dude, where did you get that console TV? I was like, that's pretty sweet. He's like, oh, I bought it at like a rummage sale. He's like, I'm actually gonna put a fish aquarium inside of it. I'm like, yep, that's kind of the new thing that's going on with the consoles is that you just basically turn them into an aquarium.
Yeah.
It's about all they're good for anymore.
Right. Right.
Although you get the parents who are like, I remember when we only had 5 channels, and if the president was on, there was nothing on.
There's nothing on. Yep. That's all you get.
Like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't grow up with 5 channels.
Yeah, we had about five, I think. There was the three main news channels in Atlanta, and then there was the one public, Georgia Public Broadcasting, which has always been on since I was a child, so it's always
Yeah.
been there. And then like three channels that were up on the other dial. So you turn the upper dial to you, I think, and then the lower dial was like channels
Yeah, I
13
remember those.
to 80 or whatever, and you'd spin it really fast because there was a channel, I think it was channel 68, so it was 17 um 36, 46, and 60, let's say
Mhm.
68. And you would go, well, let's see what's on channel 68. Brrr, 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 you know, and it was just like, well, this is the most annoying noise in the world. My kids can't even understand it. Like, what? Why would you? What? Why don't you just
you couldn't watch
push the
late night
button?
TV and turn the channels. You'd wake
Mm-mm.
everybody else up in the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah. You'd put your hand on it and try to hold it so it wasn't quite as loud. But no,
Yeah.
they know where you're going.
And
There was
then
nothing ever
and
to
then you had the
go there.
rabbit ears too. And if
Yes.
you got it right and it moved when you moved away, it was like, don't move. Like one kid's just like standing
Just
there.
stand there. You just stand there and hold that. I'm watching wrestling.
You're a great conductor, but I can't see the show anymore.
Nice.
Don't move.
Doesn't matter. We're not here for you. We're here for Dad.
The 80s and 70s, great times.
Beautiful, beautiful time.
Alrighty. Well, I think from there we'll put a stamp on this as a fun done conversation.
Yeah.
I do want to before we kick off, kind of put out a couple things there. One thing I wanted to do was I really wanted to thank some folks. So one, we've had quite a few listeners consistently listening to our episodes. Actually, you don't know this, Danny, probably, but the episode with our wives is actually the most listened to episode out of all of them.
I'm not surprised.
So yeah, it's a good episode. But yeah, I mean, we just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's been listening and supporting us.
Definitely.
And it's been great to hear from some of the guys through the closed group. If anybody's listening that's not in the closed group, please send us messages. We'd love to hear from you. It's always nice to hear from our listeners. The other people I wanted to say thank you to was I wanted to say thank you to David Lambert. He is a professor at Edgewood College in Madison, Wisconsin. He's a part of the psychology department, and he teaches a class called Parent-Child Relationships. And he's having his class listen to a couple hours of our podcast to get an idea of what being stay-at-home dad's like, and also going to be holding a panel for his class with some of our stay-at-home dads from the closed group. And so I just wanted to thank them for listening in, and for David for reaching out to the National At Home Dad Network and grabbing some of our awesome dads to come and talk and share with the college students what being a stay-at-home dad's like. So that's kind of the thank yous there. The other thing, if anybody's listening that doesn't know this, on Monday nights, we have a really cool weekly event called the Dad Lounge. Just kind of given that title here recently, but the Dad Lounge is every Monday night starting at 8 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. You can find out information on that through the closed group. If you're not in the closed National At Home Dad group, there you can reach out to me if you're a stay-at-home dad, if you're like not on Facebook or whatever, or something else, like, and we can get you the information so you can get in there. But we usually get 20 or so dads from all over the country coming together and hanging out. And it's funny because it starts at 8 p.m. Eastern, but the guys on the West Coast take it at about 10 p.m. Eastern, and they run with it on their time until midnight their time sometimes. So it goes through the evening, which is awesome. And they're in there just talking about life and just sharing stories and hanging out, and it's just a lot of fun. So that's something that interests you, check it out, reach out to us, and we can get you the information as well. So some fun little upcoming news for things. We've lined up a couple of really cool interviews coming up here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be talking with a gentleman from the National Parents Organization, and he is a part of the chapter out of Virginia for that. And I think if it works out, he'll have a person on with him. But we're going to be talking about family law and shared parenting and all those kind of things. So Danny and I are really excited about that episode coming up. And then we're in the works talking to a sleep coach, because there's a lot of guys a lot of parents who've been asking about, like, how do I get my kid to go to sleep well? And so we're going to bring on a sleep coach and talk to her about some tips and tricks, and try to help some of you guys out there with that. But yeah, some exciting things there. You looking forward to that as well, Danny?
I really am. I talked with the sleep consultant earlier today and just checking everything that she has to offer. And I'm like, man, where were you 14 years ago? Are you serious? And she said she gets that all the time. She's like, I hear that all the time because you don't realize. I mean, I never would have considered a sleep coach, a sleep consultant, or anything along those lines. I was, well, I just figure it out. I'll read a book or something. But obviously, I could have done way better and gotten way more sleep. So
Right.
I'm excited about that. But also, Christian Posh from
Yeah.
for family law and things like that. I was really impressed with the amount of information that he has and the things that he's been looking at. Again, it's kind of those kind of laws are state specific.
Yeah.
So it may not actually hit me here in Georgia in the same way, the same wording or whatever, but he's just very professional and
Yeah.
very educated and knowledgeable about what he's doing. And I'm really excited, excuse me, to hear from him.
Definitely. So
So,
I'm excited for those two, and then also we'll start also getting into having the uh, like the geek side of things and geeking out on stuff and
oh yeah.
working that out. So yeah, so some fun episodes to come over the next few weeks, and so we hope you'll tune in. And we thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you all next week.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.